Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
This one is juicy.
Yeah, this one is about dating and body image, and we're going to be looking at a fascinating Reddit thread from Ask Men Advice that just blew up.
I was reading it this morning. I was like, whoa, this is,
So many responses.
yeah, over 100 responses. And Anxious Letter 31, our original poster, asked, is a bit of a belly on a woman a turnoff?
Straightforward question.
Very vulnerable and just got so many different perspectives. It was really fascinating.
And it's interesting, too, because she was saying in her post that she is a woman in her 30s, she's a mom, and she's dealt with some health stuff, so she has some insecurities about, putting herself back out there.
Yeah, she even specifically said, like, please don't comment about me being a single mom.
Right, like don't make assumptions or pass judgment on that.
Which I thought was really interesting because it speaks to, I think, the pressures women often face, not just about their bodies, but about their roles in society.
Right. And dating is hard enough without feeling like you have to meet all these expectations.
Absolutely.
But I want to get back to those responses because I was reading through them and so many of the guys were using humor.
Oh, yeah.
It was like they were trying to make Anxious Otter 31 laugh and feel more comfortable.
That is interesting. I wonder if that's a genuine attempt to be supportive, or is it a way for men to deflect from the vulnerability of the question?
Ooh, that's a good point.
Because it is kind of a sensitive topic, right?
It is, and so maybe they are trying to lighten the mood.
Yeah, or maybe they're just uncomfortable with the idea of women having insecurities in the first place.
Yeah, and that's something we'll definitely unpack as we look at these responses because even those humorous ones can reveal a lot about
Underlying attitudes, for sure.
yeah, societal expectations.
Yeah,
Exactly. Just
exactly.
initial impressions reading through them.
So many no's.
So many no's, like the overwhelming majority of guys were like, no, a belly's not a turnoff.
Yeah, and some even said it was a turn on, which I think is just a good reminder that attraction is incredibly diverse, right?
Yeah,
What one person finds attractive, another might not.
for sure.
But I think the sheer volume of no's here suggests that a belly is far less of a deal breaker than a lot of women, I think, might fear.
Totally. And it wasn't just a simple no either. A lot of the guys were giving reasons, like it's natural or I love curves
Yeah.
or even, and I'm quoting here, good pum-pum needs shelter.
All right, so that one might be a little crude.
Yeah, a little crude.
But it does speak to a certain level of comfort with women's bodies that I think we don't always see in mainstream media.
I know.
It's a rejection of that airbrushed, perfectly toned ideal that's so often presented as the only acceptable standard of beauty.
Yeah, it's like real bodies.
Real body?
And speaking of real bodies, a lot of these guys were pointing out their own dad bods.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like, hey, I'm not exactly ripped, so why should I expect a woman to be?
And that's a great example, I think, of how societal expectations for men are also shifting.
Yeah,
We are seeing, I think, more acceptance of different body types, and this thread seems to reflect that, but then it begs the question, is this a genuine step towards equality, or is it just a way for men to kind of avoid scrutiny of their own bodies by pointing the finger at women?
right. Is it truly embracing body positivity for everyone? Or is it just hey, I'm not perfect either, so let's all just be okay with being average?
Yes, exactly, and that's where we have to kind of look beyond the surface level and really analyze the underlying motivations.
Yeah,
Because true body positivity is about celebrating all bodies, not just settling for mediocrity.
totally. And I think that's a good point to remember as we continue this, because even though it's great that so many guys were cool with a belly, we can't just take those responses at face value.
Yeah, we have to think about them.
We have to think about the context, societal pressures, and the potential for hidden biases.
Absolutely. And that's why these conversations are so important to really
Yes.
critically examine the messages that we're receiving about body image.
Both for ourselves and for others.
Exactly.
So before we get too deep into the psychology of it all, I do want to touch on a few other types of responses that we saw,
Oh, yeah.
because there were some that weren't quite as positive.
Okay, let's hear it.
And I think it's important to acknowledge those, too, for a balanced perspective.
Definitely. We want to make sure that this is a balanced deep dive.
So a handful of guys did say a belly could be a turnoff.
Okay.
Some said it depends maybe on the size or the proportion.
Okay.
And then there were the few who got really hung up on this whole belly to boobs ratio thing.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that's a classic example of objectification, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It reduces women to a set of measurements rather than seeing them as whole individuals.
Yeah, it's like we are more than just a collection of body parts.
Exactly.
And it makes me think about, those double standards that we see so often.
For sure.
Women are constantly bombarded with messages about needing to be thin and toned,
Right.
while men are given more leeway
Yeah, and that double standard is often perpetuated by media and advertising, which present a very narrow and often unrealistic ideal of beauty.
Absolutely.
So it is something to think about.
For sure. Now, there was one response that really jumped out at me because it tried to use porn as an argument.
Oh, no.
This guy was basically saying, because porn stars are usually super tone, that must be what men prefer in real life.
Oh, gosh.
But thankfully, other users in the thread were quick to point out how flawed that logic is.
Yeah, I mean, comparing real-life attraction to the often unrealistic and highly curated world of pornography is just not a valid comparison.
It's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
But speaking of unrealistic standards, there was this one story that was just so heartwarming.
Okay.
And I think it kind of like mini viral within the thread. It was this bodybuilder who was talking about how much he loves his wife, belly and all, and
Aw.
how he finds her voice, her personality, everything about her beautiful.
And that, I think, really speaks to the point that we've kind of been circling around, which is that true attraction goes way beyond physical appearance.
Right. It's about connecting with someone on a deeper level,
Yeah.
appreciating their individuality.
Finding beauty in the whole package.
The whole package. So as we move into the next part of our deep dive, I want you to think about, what stands out to you about these responses.
Yeah.
And have you ever felt insecure about a physical feature?
Great questions. We are going to be diving deeper into those themes and more in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned. It's so interesting how this one Reddit thread just sparked so many different conversations.
Like it opened up a Pandora's box
Yeah.
of insecurities.
Yeah, in a good way, though.
Yeah, in a good way. Like we're getting to examine those and maybe challenge some of them too.
Yeah, I think one of the most valuable things about this whole deep dive is that there's such a range of perspectives.
Totally.
Even in this one thread, you see everything from super reassuring to kind of more problematic.
And we can't ignore the fact that a few guys did say that a belly could be a turnoff.
Yeah.
And I think that can be hard to hear.
It is, yeah, especially if you're already feeling insecure about that.
Totally.
So I think it's important to acknowledge those feelings. If you read those comments and you felt hurt or frustrated, that's totally valid.
Yeah.
But I think what's also important to remember is that a few individuals expressing, a preference doesn't negate the experiences and opinions of all those other guys who said no.
Right. So how do we reconcile those conflicting viewpoints?
I think it comes down to recognizing that, everyone is different.
Okay.
And just like women have a diversity of preferences, so do men.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you can't control what other people find attractive.
Right. So it's about focusing on what you find attractive.
In yourself.
Yeah, and in others.
And in others, and kind of cultivating that sense of self-worth that's not based on, getting external validation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And recognizing that your value as a person goes so far beyond what you look like.
For sure. You're so much more than that.
So much more than that. But it's easier said than done, right? Because we are bombarded with messages about what's considered beautiful.
Constantly.
All the time.
All the time.
And it's so easy to internalize those messages and start comparing ourselves.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important to be mindful of the media that we consume and the messages that we allow ourselves to absorb. Seek out diverse and realistic representations of beauty, follow body-positive influencers, support brands that are embracing all shapes and sizes,
Yeah.
and challenge those unrealistic beauty standards whenever you encounter them.
Yeah, we've got to create a culture that celebrates individuality and that recognizes that beauty comes in all different forms.
Yes, I love that.
And I think this Reddit thread, for all of its flaws,
Yeah.
it does offer like a little glimmer of hope.
A little bit.
Because it shows that maybe those attitudes are shifting a little bit.
Yeah, maybe.
And that there's a growing appreciation for real bodies.
Yeah, I think that shift is happening, and it's being driven in part by conversations like the one we're having right now.
Right.
By talking openly about these issues, by challenging those unrealistic standards, and by celebrating diversity, we're helping create a more inclusive and accepting world.
I love that. And as we're talking about all of this, I keep thinking back to Anxious Out of 30, one of the original posts, and how she specifically asked people not to comment on her being a single mom.
Right. That's such an important point.
Yeah.
It speaks to, I think, the layers of pressure that women often face.
Right.
There's this expectation to be a perfect mom, to have it all together.
Right.
And I'm sure dating as a single parent adds a whole other layer of complexity to that.
Totally. It's like You can be a mom or you can be sexy, but you can't be both.
Right, and that's just not true at all.
Right.
There are so many amazing single moms out there who are confident and attractive and thriving in their relationships.
Yes.
And I think it's important to highlight those stories and to challenge that narrow and limiting narrative.
Absolutely. Let's celebrate those single moms who are rocking their bodies and their lives.
Yes, love it.
Because ultimately, it's about finding someone who appreciates you for the whole package. You
The
know,
whole
deli
package.
kids and all.
Yeah. And speaking of packages, I think this whole deep dive has been such a valuable package of insights for our listener.
He really has.
Regardless of their gender or relationship status,
Yeah.
it's just a good reminder that we all have insecurities.
We do.
And those insecurities are often unfounded, and that true beauty comes from within.
And it's not even just about physical appearance either.
Oh, yeah, tell me more.
Because this thread also revealed something, I think, about how we approach conversations about body image and insecurities.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, like I noticed a few comments, where some guys were suggesting that Anxious Otter 31 should just hit the gym
Uh-oh.
if she was unhappy with her belly.
Yeah.
And it's like they were framing it as this simple, matter of willpower or self-control.
Oh, that's a really good point. And I think it highlights the need for sensitivity and understanding when we're talking about these things.
Right.
Because while exercise and a healthy lifestyle are important,
Yeah.
it's not always that simple.
It's not that simple. And like you said earlier, you can't just look at someone and judge their health or their fitness level.
Exactly.
There might be underlying health conditions, genetics or other life circumstances that make it difficult to achieve a certain body type.
Right. And telling someone to just work out more can be really dismissive.
Yeah.
And even hurtful, especially if they're already struggling with body image issues or health challenges.
So how can we approach these conversations in a more supportive and understanding way?
I think it starts with listening.
Okay.
Really hearing what the other person is saying and acknowledging their feelings.
Yeah.
And instead of jumping in with unsolicited advice, try to asking open-ended questions like,
Ooh, I like that.
what makes you feel insecure about this? Or how can I best support you?
I love that because it's really creating that space for the person to feel safe.
Safe to express themselves without judgment.
Yeah, and it's recognizing that, everyone's journey with body image is so unique.
It really is.
And there's no right or wrong way to feel about your body.
Exactly. And if someone does open up to you about their insecurities, try validating their feelings
Yeah.
instead of minimizing them.
Yeah.
Even a simple, I hear you, or it makes sense that you're feeling that way can go a long way.
I love that.
Yeah, it's about acknowledging their experience without trying to fix it or dismiss it.
Yes. And ultimately, we're all in this together.
We are.
We all have insecurities. We all struggle with body image at times.
Totally.
And we can all benefit from a little more compassion and understanding.
Yes, I love that so much.
So, as we move into the last part of our deep dive,
Yeah?
what have we learned?
Oh, gosh, so much.
So much.
We've
man.
learned that attraction is diverse.
Yes.
That societal expectations are constantly evolving.
They are.
And that true beauty comes from within.
It does.
We've also learned, I think, that conversations about body image can be complex and nuanced.
Yeah,
And that approaching them with sensitivity and empathy is so crucial.
it is. And I think we've also learned that it's okay to challenge those unrealistic beauty standards and embrace our own unique beauty. Better preach, Shelley,
Belly and all. And as we head into this last part of the deep dive, I just encourage everyone listening to think about, how these messages that we're talking about might be impacting your own life.
Yeah.
And how you can kind of break free from those constraints and embrace your authentic self.
Yeah.
And if you're enjoying this conversation so far, don't forget to like this video
Yes.
and share it with anyone who might need a little boost of body positivity.
Yes. Spread the love.
Spread the love. Every share helps us reach a wider audience and spread that message of self-love and acceptance.
It's so wild to me how we started with this question about bellies. It's become such a bigger conversation.
I know, right? It really shows how much body image is tied to all these other things.
Like societal expectations and,
How we value ourselves.
Exactly.
And how we think other people value us.
And I think one thing that's really come out of this is just how complex these conversations can be.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, there's no easy answer.
No.
No one-size-fits-all solution.
Definitely not. And I think that's why it's so important to approach these conversations with a lot of empathy.
Right, because what might seem harmless to one person,
Could be really triggering to someone else.
totally, like those comments we were talking about earlier, where some guys were saying, just hit the gym.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's so simple.
Right, like it's just a matter of willpower.
Right.
But it's not that simple.
No, it's not. And, I know those guys probably meant well,
I think so.
but it just highlights how easy it is to make assumptions about people's bodies
Yeah, and their health.
and their health. And, we can't assume everyone has the same abilities or resources,
Exactly. There are so many factors that go into body shape and size.
like genetics,
Health conditions.
life circumstances.
Exactly. And it's just not fair to reduce someone's body to a simple matter of self-control.
So what can we do to be more understanding in these conversations?
Well, I think recognizing that everyone's journey is unique.
Okay.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Yeah.
And, there's no right or wrong way to feel about your body.
Right. It's about respecting that.
Respecting those individual experiences and not imposing our own beliefs on others.
Yeah. And really just listening more than we speak.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is just listen without judgment,
Absolutely.
offer support and encouragement.
And if someone does open up to you, validate their feelings.
Yeah, don't minimize them.
Yeah. Even just saying, I hear you, or that makes sense that you're feeling that way.
Right. It can go a long way.
It can make someone feel so much better.
Absolutely. It's about creating that safe space,
Yeah.
where people feel comfortable expressing themselves.
And ultimately, I think what we keep coming back to is that we're all in this together.
We are?
We all have insecurities. We all struggle.
Yep.
And you know what we all need is a little more compassion
So much compassion.
and understanding from each other.
Totally.
So, wow, I mean, we have covered so much ground today.
I know, starting with the belly and look at us now.
I know from that one Yet It thread, we've talked about body image, societal expectations, self-love,
And everything in between.
and everything in between. And I hope that everyone listening has found this conversation insightful.
Me too. I think it's been really eye-opening.
And if you have enjoyed this deep dive, please like and share with your friends.
Yes, spread the love.
Spread the love, help us reach a wider audience and get these conversations going.
Exactly. And don't forget to subscribe to Shauna Polage on YouTube
Yes, and follow Voices of the Soul.
for more deep dives on all sorts of fascinating topics.
We've got so much more to explore, so stay tuned.
And most importantly, be kind to yourself
Yes.
and to each other.
Embrace your unique beauty.
Belly and all.
Belly and all.
We'll see you the next time.